Make some noise for the legendary Michael Paré.
Hello, New Jersey.
Thank you so much for taking your time and being with us. We may have to cut it a little bit short because of a scheduling problem with his photo ops, but I'll make sure we get some audience questions in. And thank you so much for wearing a leather jacket because that's making all my Eddie Wilson dreams come true right now. You've been a hero of mine since I was a little boy and watching Eddie 1 and 2 over and over and over again on VHS tape. So I've always wondered, who are the heroes that inspired you to pursue acting?
Oh, man, you know, I guess with every actor my age, James Dean, Marlon Brando, Montgomery Clift, Paul Newman, you know, Errol Flynn, Clark Gable, all those guys.
The greats.
Yeah, the greats, yeah.
Wow, love it. We'll get to the Eddie and the Cruisers questions, of course, but I want to start with some of the earlier stuff. What are your memories of playing Tony Villicana on The Greatest American Hero?
Greatest American Hero was the first job I got as an actor, right? I got lucky and I went in on a cattle call in New York for ABC's talent development program and they put me on Greatest American Hero. But you know, I lived in New York. I rarely drove a car. And I had this, there's a scene where I'm driving the school bus and I'm driving the bus and the camera crew's behind me and it's handheld. And I'm driving the bus in downtown LA and I jam on the brakes and the cameraman goes like this, whoa, bam! He got a black eye. He really came to work with a black guy the next day. So that's one. Learning to drive on a movie set is not the smartest thing to do. The next season, I have the Villicana Piranha, you know, that big convertible that I drove the gang around in. They're on the back, the camera crew. And I jam, and boom, 3 of them fell off.
Oh.
So they said, we're not really big on the Villicana Piranha anymore. Paré can't drive.
Oh man, amazing. So
yeah,
of course,
it was a wonderful thing, man. Here I was in a big Hollywood television show, and I was ready to go back to the kitchen just before I got that audition.
Oh my God, wow. I've been working in the restaurant business a long time myself, so I'm glad you didn't go back to the kitchen, believe me. Very, very glad. So not too much longer came Eddie and the Cruisers, of course. What are your earliest memories of the project or your first impressions of the project?
You know, it's about Greatest American Hero. We were shooting the second season. We had a double episode in St. Croix in the Caribbean. And we fly back through New York. And me and Don Cervantes, the Paco in the show, I said, let's get off the plane. We don't have to work for a couple of days, and we'll go stay at my brother's. And so we're crashing on the Lower East Side, and my agent called up and said, what do you mean you didn't come back to LA? And I said, I don't work until Thursday. She said, yeah, all right, I got you an audition. And that's when I met Marty Davidson. So I just happened to be in town when I met Marty. You know, my career has a lot to do with things just happened. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and, you know, you might have heard this story, but when I first met Marty, he's not a nice guy, because he's making a movie about he's trying to create a rock and roll icon, and it's not something you can just cast, right?
No, definitely.
So in the first meeting, he's saying, "So, are you a musician?" And I said, "Yeah, man." Do you play? And I said, "Yeah, I play guitar like Jimi Hendrix." And you sing? And I said, well, it's more like Sinatra. And I had never played a guitar. I had never sang a note. But I figured it was just a goof because I happened to be in New York. I didn't expect to get it. So after 3 or 4 more meetings, this is the best story. There's a guy named John, a guy who said, you light up my life. He's on the poster for doing the music. Jim Brooks. Jim Brooks. He wrote You Light Up Your Life. So me and Marty and Matthew, we're doing this improv stuff, which is just typical actor stuff, which is okay. It's like an exercise. Marty says, okay, we're going to go see Jim Brooks. And I said, who's that? He's doing the music. I thought, oh, no. So we go uptown. He's on the Upper East Side. And then we go into this townhouse, right? So, you know, guy has a lot of dough. We go into the downstairs studio, and he has a whole wall of music awards. And I'm like, all right, the jig is up. They're going to find out that I can't do this, right? So he said, Jim Brooks has a stutter, so right away I'm thinking, oh man, this is just too surreal. We walk in, and Jim Brooks sits down at the piano. He says, okay, just come in on the second bar, right? And the music, he hands me the music, right? So I'm standing there by the piano, and Jim Brooks starts to play like dun 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 dun, and he's, just come in on the second bar. And I said, okay. So I'm starting to sweat, and I'm starting to see gray. It's like I know I'm getting ready to faint, and he does it again, dun 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 dun, and Marty Davidson stands up and he says, "What is this bullshit? This isn't rock and roll. We're out of here." And I sat down and I was fainted for a second. I was like, and I said, "What happened?" And Marty says, "Come on, we're leaving," and we left. So he never found out that I couldn't sing or play music until we got to New Jersey.
My God.
You know, it's things happen sometimes, and I was blessed, man. I got a lot of magic in my career.
Wow. Well,
before I got this audition with ABC's Talent Development Program, which was run by Joyce Selznick, is David O. Selznick's daughter, right? So, I mean, this is a Hollywood icon. My agent couldn't get me in on the cattle call because all the agents were only allowed to send 2 clients, right? So I said, so who did you send? He was a waiter at Tavern on the Green. I knew him, right? So I followed him into the audition. I snuck into the cattle call, and I go in, and it's like on the 8th floor of the Laurent Hotel in New York. And, you know, they have the stack of sides there of, you know, scenes that you have to audition with. And I just walk in and I take a couple, and I don't sign in. Everybody else is signing in. I just took the sides and I sat down. And this woman comes out, and she's like, you know, I don't know. She seemed like an old woman to me. She was probably 50. So, I mean, not really old, is it, right? It's not old. And she has a cane, and she walks over and she looks at me, and I thought, oh shit, they're going to throw me out. And I look around, and she goes back in, and I think she's going to get security. He said, bounce this guy out. And she comes out again, and she says, do you know who I am? And I said, no. And she says, do you know what we're doing here? And I said, yeah, I'm here to audition. She says, come back on Friday. I'm putting you on tape. I'm taking you to Hollywood. And that was Joyce Selznick, and I got it.
Wow.
Yeah, just like that. But now here's the other magic. I'm going backwards. So I shot this little student film. You know, it was with a girl I was in acting class with. And we shot for like 2 days. And she called me up and said, Michael, do you want to have dinner with Salvador Dali? And I said, where? And she said, at the Laurent. And I said, yeah, that's a great kitchen, because I was a chef. I knew about the different kitchens in New York. And she said, do you know who Salvador Dali is? And I said, no. And she said, well, he's a very famous artist. And I said, so what time? You know, so I get there, 8 o'clock. I had to wear a jacket because it's, and they said, don't try to shake hands. He doesn't shake hands, right? He doesn't touch people. So of course, when he walks in, I said, hello, Dolly. He didn't laugh, right? He just, with the mustache, he just gave the look. But anyway, so I sit down, you know, Gala Dolly, Dolly's wife, is this Russian woman. Says, you sit next to me. So I sit down next to her. Mia Farrow is on my right, and Gala Dolly and Salvador and this whole crew of bizarre people. And she says, come here. And she looks in my eyes, and she says, give me your hand. And she looks in my hand, give me your hand. She looks in my hand. She looks in my eyes, and she takes a flower out of the arrangement on the table, and she starts picking the petals off. And she says, in 6 months, a woman is going to come into your life, and you will be a national name in the United States. And I said, is it Vivian? Because Vivian was this supermodel that I was working with. He said, no, it's not Vivian. And I'm looking around the table. Is it Mia? He said, no. I said, so who is it? She says, I don't know, but in 6 months, this is going to happen. 4 months later, I met Joyce Selznick, and they brought me to Hollywood and put me on TV.
Wow. Oh, my God.
So, I mean, there's a lot of magic in the beginning of my career, and it really was honest-to-goodness magic.
There's a lot of destiny, I'm telling you.
And here's the very beginning. I'm working in New York as a chef. I went to the Culinary Institute, and my girlfriend was a waitress on 67th and Columbus Avenue in a bar called Chip's Pub. And I used to go down there every night after work, and I could drink at the bar till she was finish her job. And this woman kept sitting down next to me like 3 nights in a row, asking me if I was an actor or a dancer or something like that. And I'm kind of blowing her off because, my girlfriend was there, and I thought she was just hitting on me. She was an agent, and she sent me to my first acting class in Carnegie Hall.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And just before I left for I just shot a movie in Rome. Just before I left for Rome, she called me up and said, "Michael, it's Yvette." And I said, "Yvette, oh my God." She says, "Yeah, I'm back in Los Angeles. Want to have lunch?" So there it is. It's like when I get back to LA, I'm going to have lunch with the girl who brought me into show business.
Wow.
Well, she's not a girl anymore. She was, it's Yvette Bigelow. She's like, I don't know, it's got to be 70.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
70-something.
Wow. This is you. Thank you so much. You're dropping such amazing pearls. I love all these stories. So one thing I've always been curious about was the sleeper hit status of Eddie and the Cruisers 1. Was that a big surprise to everybody?
I don't think we knew what we had. Because like I said, we shot it on the hiatus of Greatest American Hero. We shot that. I shot like 4 or 5 more episodes of Greatest American Hero, and somehow I got a job in Australia. And when I got back, suddenly it was like, Michael, Eddie's big. And they put it in a theater for a couple of weeks, and then they pulled it, and then they ran it on HBO, and then it got in a theater again. Yeah. So it was right at that time where HBO was having a big impact.
Yeah.
The same thing happened with Robert Duvall's movie, The Great Santini.
Oh.
I first saw that on HBO, and then it got so much juice that they re-released it in a theater.
Wow.
Yeah, they didn't realize the impact of cable television and streaming, Hollywood movies, just like releasing it in the theater.
And then the added bonus of the soundtrack. I think the soundtrack, of course, really pushed the movie to another level. And one thing I've always wondered about is, do you have a preference between the soundtrack to Eddie 1 or Eddie 2?
I liked Eddie 1 more because it was all about discovery. I mean, I didn't know anything about music, but Helen Schneider, who played Joanne Carlino, right? her manager, husband, lover, he kind of taught me. He was my secret weapon because nobody knew how to do this. The reason they didn't want to hire a real rock and roll star is because then it would have been, they were looking at Rick Springfield, because then it would have been a Rick Springfield movie. And they had Southside Johnny became a technical advisor. They would have been a Southside Johnny movie. Or Kenny Vance wanted to do doo-wop, and they didn't want it to be a vehicle for an established rock and roll guy.
Yeah.
Everybody in the cast was actors. Helen was, a rock and roll star in Germany, but she was a chick, right? So there was nothing there.
Wow.
The Tunes played saxophone, but we were all actors acting as a rock and roll band.
Have you kept in touch with Tunes?
Yeah, I stay in touch with him every once. He'll give me a call out of nowhere sometimes. He said, "Hey, Michael, we're going to be in your neighborhood," and I said, "Dude, I'm in Holland, or I'm in Italy, or Germany. Sorry."
I finally got to see a John Cafferty concert just about the summer before COVID, and Tunes, they play a 3.5-hour set, almost no break. And Tunes stays on stage for another hour and a half after the show, wearing his sax, signing shit for free for people. This guy is amazing. He's 84, talking about all his great-grandkids. And I honestly felt like I'm watching Michael Jordan right here. I've never seen a sax player like this. Is the fucking guy.
Yeah.
It was really incredible. So.
All of his kids are musicians also, and his grandchildren.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I probably know their work and don't even realize it.
Yeah, they played with Michael Jackson and all like major stars.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Wow, I probably do know whose kids are. So, of course, have to ask about Streets of Fire, another one of my all-time favorite films, and there's just so much to unpack there, but any favorite stories or memories from working on Streets of Fire?
Well, we shot for 50 days, and that's a long shooting schedule, right? And, you know, a lot of, you know, I can't tell you these great dramatic stories, but I had never ridden a motorcycle. I had never been on a motorcycle. I could barely drive a car, right? So the night before, I have that scene where I come riding down the hill and I turn around and I said, all right, I'm going to run these guys for a while. It was raining in Chicago, and the prop guy was from New York, you know, and he's saying, I said, dude, I've never rode a motorcycle. He says, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. I'm going to get on the fucking thing and see what happens. And he says, so him and the teamster who's in charge of the vehicles, I was riding a motorcycle up and down the alley, you know, just like boom, and then they had to come and turn it around, and you know, and I did this for like, I didn't know. Again, it's one of those things where I didn't have any idea what I'm supposed to do, and I said, "Is there any tricks?" He said, "Don't shift gears. Just put it in the second and come down, clutch and jam on the brake." And I just got lucky, and I came down and jammed on the brake, and it turned at just the right moment. I did my line, and they said cut, and it was like, man, because I had to ride the motorcycle right up, you know, like the camera, say you're the camera and the whole crew, you imagine, the big crew, it's
15 people around.
$25 million movie, and I come up with a motorcycle and I go, vroom. All right, you run, take off, I'm gonna run these guys for a while. Like, man, they don't know how close they came to it, like a major accident. It could have been anything, you know. They did the same thing with that Mercury. I didn't know how to drive a stick, and the same prop guy, he says, it's real easy. You push, you pull, and I said...
It was the same guy, he never learned?
Yeah.
So, he'll be fine. Yeah.
You know, that was... Then there's a scene where we're on a Universal backlot, so it wasn't that dangerous. But when the school bus comes driving up, Walter says, all right, you step out there and put your hand up. And I said, well, it's an actor driving. He says, Tom Cody's not afraid, right? And I walk out there. Stoney Jackson is driving, this wild young actor, and he's come buzzing up in the school bus. And I hit my mark, and I put my hand up, and I touched the bus, and he jammed on the brake, and it went like this, boom. And it looked like I stopped the car with my hand. It was just hitting that mark and boom. Because, you know, that happens when you brake in a car. So there's a lot of magic. You know, that's why I say I am a grateful actor and grateful to be employed in the entertainment industry, because I have been blessed. I have had a lot of magic working on my part.
You've put a lot of magic up on the screen yourself. I could feel the magic just sitting next to you. Honestly, I'm a huge fan. So I don't want to hog the mic too much, guys. I just want to reiterate, as soon as I see hands go up, I am happy to call out audience questions, but I do have plenty to go in case, you know, you get shy. I understand how it is. So jumping a little bit out of order, but I would be so upset if I did not ask you about doing The Virgin Suicides, another one of my all-time favorite films.
I just happened to be in Toronto. Right? And I had auditioned for Francis Coppola and Fred Roos. And I don't know if he knew I was in Toronto, but Fred Roos called me up and said, Michael, Sophia's doing a movie in Toronto. We only need you for 2 days. Would you be interested? I said, yeah, when? And that's how I got it.
Wow.
Yeah. And, you know, here. So I'm on the set of like the detox rehab where you discover me. And here's this woman with this big handheld camera walking around, and she says, oh, don't worry about me. I'm Sophia's mom. So it's mom doing the EPK backstage footage, and it just, I could have been walking into somebody's kitchen, and she said, don't get in the way, because I'm going to start rolling. You know? Just a very nice woman. You would never know that she was the wife of Francis Ford Coppola, the mother of the director.
Wow.
Yeah, just... Don't worry about me. I'm Sophia's mom.
Don't worry. Yeah, just Sophia's mom here. So another one, again, jumping out of chronology here, but another one of my all-time favorites, John Carpenter's Village of the Damned. Any memories there?
You know, John writes, directs, produces, scores. He does everything on it. And he brought us up to Northern California where they shot The Birds. You know, so it was all kind of, here. So I meet John. He is, like in Toluca Lake. He had a house there. And he wanted to meet me. I didn't have to audition, just had to talk with him. You know, we talked about, you know, a little bit about politics, about Hollywood, about, you know, family and stuff like that. And he says, all right, yeah, this is going to work. And I said, so what's next? He says, well, we start in a month. We'll have you up there. And I was like, yeah, John Carpenter just hired me for his movie. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. You know, Christopher Reeve, that was his last movie, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But John's wife, I forget her name, Sandy King, they had a big house up there, you know, John and Sandy, and, you know, I mean, it's John Carpenter, right?
Yeah.
And Sandy says, I'm having a few people over, you know, and we're going to have like a big potluck. And I said, oh, no, not a potluck. I'm going to make bouillabaisse. And she says, and I said, do you cook? And she says, well, you know, we put it all in a pot and we steam it. And I said, oh, so it's more like a clam bake or clams. And she says, yeah, why? And I said, I'll make curry, right? And Peter Jason went out and caught a bunch of salmon. And I said, all right, I'll make some Dijonnaise. So suddenly I'm cooking for John Carpenter, his wife, Christopher Reeve. And it was, and I make a great curry. Oh, so there's Christopher Reeve, Superman, eating my curry. He says, wow, man, this is really good. What did you use? Well, I said, I use a little apple juice. And he says, you know. Wow. So, you know, it was a beautiful moment. It was you know, it was, I imagine what it was like when you were making movies in the 50s and the 60s and you go off to location and it really is that familia thing, you know.
I just want to be in a room with John Carpenter, Superman, Eddie Wilson, and Luke Skywalker talking about the curry.
Yeah, right, yeah.
That's where I want to be in that room so bad. Oh, my God. So I do, of course, have to ask about one of the greatest sequels ever made. Of course, I'm talking about Eddie and the Cruisers 2, Eddie Lives. Yeah. I love this movie, maybe more than life itself. Any memories of coming back and doing the sequel?
Of doing another one, you mean?
Of doing Eddie 2.
Oh, Eddie 2. Well, you know, the Scotti brothers came in at the end of Eddie 1 when they were short of money and threw in some money, and they bought all the record rights. Right, so they got all the money from the music.
Oh yeah, they made out big.
They made a lot of dough and without any effort at all.
Wow.
But they were also big record producers. They didn't know that much about movies, so they had kind of the comeback thing that Eddie somehow is motivated to start playing again. We shot up in Montreal. We were there maybe 7 to 8 weeks. I don't know, something like that. We had twice as much music. We had twice as many performances. But I really didn't have the band like I had in the first one, because on the first one we had 2 weeks of improvisational rehearsal. So we all started to bond. I mean, we became a crew. You know, we were a group. The second one, they were all musicians. You know, like one of them was from Platinum Blonde, which is big, you know, glam rock band in Canada. Another one, you know, was a studio musician. The drummer played every instrument you can play.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, I couldn't relate to them about the dramatic issues. You know, it was like talking to, you know, the gas station attendant about poetry. Maybe he's a poet, but most of them aren't, right?
Yeah.
And I couldn't relate to them. Bernie Colson was special, but he was a complete wild boy. I mean, this guy
about Bernie. What?
Bernie Colson. He played Rick Diesel.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I'm a big Bernie Colson fan. Yeah.
But his original name was DeSalle. But I told Tony Scott, I said, Tony, DeSalle is not a rock and roll name. Rick Diesel. That sounds like, you know.
You came up with the name Rick Diesel?
I changed DeSalle to Diesel.
Wow,
you know,
I named my band in high school Rick Diesel, so I owe you that.
Wow.
And I tell you, like, when I first started playing music, I rewatched Eddie and the Cruisers, 1 and 2, because I hadn't seen them for a few years, and I became re-obsessed. And all my friends became re-obsessed. There are guys that I've been friends with for 20 years. I don't know if we've ever had a conversation that was not ultimately about Eddie and the Cruisers 1 or 2. It always comes back to these movies.
Wow.
And I gotta say, the scenes you have with Bernie Colson, where you're saying, you know, louder ain't more intense and more notes. It's not what it's about, you know what I mean? And you show him, you know, he shreds and then you tastefully play. That is one of the most poignant scenes that has ever been written about what it's like to create music and what it's like to write music. In all these other fucking movies, they treat it like it's weightlifting. Like, oh, you gotta be faster, stronger, you know, work hard, you know, no. That's not what it's about. It's about creating something. And I swear to God, Eddie 2 really taps into something special for musicians. Because I don't know a single musician that's ever seen that movie and didn't want to watch it again right away. They love it that much. So
wow, man, that's really cool.
Yeah,
that's really. So the fun story is, so we go into Vegas to open for
Bon Jovi.
Bon Jovi, yeah, and before he was the John Bon Jovi. But he was already with the Philadelphia Wise Guys, right? And so we're doing our show, and they came to Tony Scotti and said, how would you feel if they opened for the rest of John's tour? And Tony says, these aren't, it's not a real band, man. Not a real band. We don't have them under contract. I can't say anything. So if, you know, we almost would have went on the road with these guys, but it would have been a lip sync band. It would have been like Milli Vanilli, you know.
But it would have been way cooler than Milli Vanilli. Come on.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I tell you, Milli Vanilli should have taken lessons from you in how to lip sync because nobody does it better, my friend. I've seen all the music movies.
West Side Story.
West Side Story.
Yeah, those were 2 lip syncs.
Really?
Yeah.
West Side Story.
Tony was lip syncing. Richard Beamer, that was lip syncing.
I don't care, man. They're not as good as Eddie Wilson.
They did it good, man.
They're great, but they're not Eddie Wilson good. We got a question. Yes, follow-up question.
Just because it fits in right
Yeah, absolutely.
What are the chances of a Eddie the Cruisers Part 3?
Thank you. Chances of Eddie 3.
You know, that topic has come up a few times, and it always ends when they can't find who owns the rights. You know, because...
Internet, do your job, Internet. Find out who owns the rights so we can make this happen. I will sell all my blood. I'll do anything to make Eddie 3 happen.
It's a French company, Canal Plus or Canal.
Canal Plus.
Yeah, in France, not Canadian Canal Plus, but it's French because Tony was married to Sylvie Vartan. So Tony had a French-Canadian company. I mean, a Parisian French, right? His wife, Sylvie Vartan, was like an enormous star in France. So Tony has he had a big presence there. I don't even know if he's still alive. But it's owned by a French company now.
Well, come on, French, get it together.
You know, and Toons is still alive. You got to remember that. You know?
Get it together, everybody. The world needs Eddie 3 more than it needs anything else. And we have a fan question here.
So I'm a big fan of the Philadelphia experiment. I'm not the only one. Any memories or stories about that particular project? Take your time.
Yeah, well, you know, we started shooting in Charlotte, South Carolina, and we were actually on the big Navy ships and all that stuff. And then Stuart Raffle was the director. Nancy was, you know, the female lead, and Bobby DeCicco. And, you know, it was my first sci-fi movie. So the idea of time travel, here it is. When I was like in 6th grade, my brother was going to Rensselaer for engineering, and he came home from college, and he had the book, The Philadelphia Experiment. And he said, you should read this. And I said, why? He says, this is engineering. This is an experiment that actually took place. Einstein, Opperman, Tesla, and L. Ron Hubbard were all on the Eldridge when they did the experiment. When they sent it out, you know, with just Navy guys on it, but they were all involved in it. So when they sent me the script, I don't know where I was. It might have been during Eddie and the Cruisers they started talking to me about it, but you know, we were consumed with that project. So when I finally read it and I said, I know this story. I mean, this is a true story. That, oh yeah, well, Michael, you know, we're going to fictionalize it. That's really what got me, is that I had read the book when I was like in 6th or 7th grade. The adventure, I mean, it was a long shoot. We shot through the winter. We burned an entire town down in the salt flats. It was very dangerous. Very, you know, it was like they kept asking us to get closer to the fire. And you know, I kind of knocked Nancy to the ground and my arm blistered. Like, you know, it was a scary situation. First time I flew with hot wires, you know, where were floating through space. You know, that was it. It was, you know, it was a great adventure to do sci-fi. And we had a great sci-fi team, but it was just before CGI. You know, it was just before it. And, you know, we had all practical effects.
Very cool, thank you. Wait, quick follow-up. You had to play someone from World War II era. Was that something that you kind of studied up on a little bit to kind of change your mannerisms?
Well, you know, I had two uncles that were colonels in the Marines in the South Pacific. We grew up playing Army, you know what I mean? So, you know, World War II, there were clear-cut good guys and bad guys. So it was like playing Army again as a little kid. You know, and I've done quite a few. I've been in every branch of the military now, and almost every law enforcement agency. I've been playing good guys and bad guys, I mean, since I was like 6.
Awesome, thank you.
And one more question right here.
Okay, so I would like to know, what was your all-time favorite role, and who would be your favorite co-star or leading lady in your time?
You know, Eddie, Tom Cody, and Uncle Ted from my Bad Moon. These were some of my favorite roles, and I really can't say which is a favorite, but Eddie was my first one because there was this moment the night before we shot the first rock and roll concert. They were very upset because they now knew that I had no idea what I was doing. You know, it was like, what the hell is he doing? You know, I mean, he's trying to play the bass, and they decided that, you know, I shouldn't have the bass, I should have the lead. And I didn't know anything about any of the guitars, you know, I knew this stuff. But Marty came to me and he says, tomorrow's the day, kid. If it doesn't work out, you're fired. But he didn't say it like that. He was like, really like, you know, you made a fool of me. I hired you. I'm the one who said you were the guy. And now you're gonna fuck it up, and you're gonna fuck me up, and you're gonna ruin my movie. I mean, this was all the subtext. So, and Toons was there. Toons was there when Marty's, and they were shooting the scene, where Matthew Lawrence has his band that's playing in the hotels. You know, they do those oldies but goodies. So there was a lot of people there. And Marty was yelling at me like this in front of all these people. Maybe he was hoping I would run away. But, you know, I just kind of stood there and I could feel the sweat going down my back, right? And he walks away. And Toons says, "You all right, kid?" I said, "Yeah, man, I'm okay. I'm okay." But then the day that we're shooting the first concert, everybody's in this like clubhouse, and they put me in a room by myself. We're shooting on the Haverford High School, finishing school, you know, what do you call that, campus. So, you know, I have this feeling that I'm going to be fired, so I have nothing to lose. So they say, "Okay, we're getting ready." And it's dark. And I walk out and I hit my mark, and the click track starts from Kenny Hopkins, right? And bam, I hit every syllable, every word, every breath. It just fucking happened, you know? And I did it over and over, and I did the first, you know, we do the first song, right? And the crowd goes wild. "Eddie, Eddie," and Marty's off the side saying, "Cruisers, cruisers." And the crowd's going, "Eddie, Eddie," and he said, "All right, cut. All right, I want to see you do it again," because he couldn't believe it. So, boom, I do it again. So I also have this big speech. "Hey, this is some fine college you got here, all the advantages, right?" So here we are in post-production, and you know, they have a thing called ADR, Automated Dialogue Replacement, where they play the movie, and then you have to replace the dialogue for a variety of reasons, noises or some bullshit like that. And Marty says, "All right, we got the day for this, where I have to do that speech at Haverford College, right? We have the whole day. I'm gonna take a piss, I'll be right back." And I say to the engineer, "Just run it from the beginning." And I do it from beginning to end, no cuts. And Marty comes back and says, "All right, let's get to work." And I said, Marty, I just did it. And he says, I want to hear it. I put it up. I want to see you do it again. And I did it again. I mean, man, and then it was like, all right, we had like 7 hours scheduled to do this. And boom, boom. I said, I guess it's a wrap. And we left. Me and Salamato, Matthew Lawrence. Yeah, so, none of these stories are private. I mean, there was always a witness. So those are great moments. And so what is my favorite? When Eddie and the Cruisers came out, I knew I had a career so long as I worked on my craft and stayed tight and serious. And, I've been really lucky. I've been doing this for 42 years. I got on television in 1980. 2 years before that, I was working for $16,000 a year, living in a $200 a month apartment on the Upper West Side, and bam. And I thought I was on top of the world then. I had my own apartment. It was one room, but I was in Manhattan, and I was in a great restaurant, and I thought, yeah, I've made it. I made it. I'm going to have a career as a chef. I had worked with a great chef at Tavern on the Green, and I was offered a job. The chef at Cafe Europa, which was on 74th Street and Columbus Avenue. I lived to be just a couple of doors down from that. The chef there said, Michael, my brother has a restaurant in Marseille. I can get you a job there. You have to go there, and you have to start chopping vegetables and doing the piss work until you learn French. And then I met Yvette Bickoff, and I went over, I was living with this girl. I went over to my brother's apartment, and I said, what do you think? And he said, Michael, you already got a cooking career. Go to acting class, see if you like it. So I went to Carnegie Hall, and it was like, this is the last story, then I got to go, right? So my brother says, how was it? And I said, Terry, as a cook, none of the waitresses will flirt with you because you're a cook, and they all want to be actors, models, singers, dancers. As a cook, they're not interested. But as an actor, if you could do a scene in class, suddenly they didn't care if you had any money or if you lived with your parents, because they want to work with you. So suddenly, pretty girls are talking to this knucklehead who works in the kitchen. So I said, this is for me.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Great question, too. I know you said you had to go, but I did see one question here. Right? No? You got shy now? Okay. Well, guys, I've taken up enough of your time. Put your hands together and come to Michael's table. Get some pictures, get some autographs. I know he's got a lot more stories to tell you. Make some noise again.
This is Ross Marquand, and you are watching Fandom Spotlight, which is awesome. So share, and subscribe. Oh, and have fun and follow your fandom.